Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here. A lot going on this week with our weekly update on social media. Hunter Biden has been convicted of felonies. I'll talk about that. We've got incredible, insane, frankly, new documents about Joe Biden's dogs attacking Secret Service personnel. Frankly, you're not going to believe, maybe you will, some of the material we have. The FBI was working with Democrats to destroy whistleblowers, it looks like. And on top of that, we have a new case or an effort to reopen a case for Joe Biden's records up in Delaware. We had a court hearing on that this week. Plus, we're still doing work on COVID-19, important work that I'll share with you as well. So much going on. I guess I'll open with the verdict against Hunter Biden up in Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware, in federal court. Charges brought by the special counsel, the corrupted and compromised special counsel, against Hunter over his purchasing a gun after falsely attesting that he wasn't a drug addict on the federal form one has to file when purchasing a gun. And on top of that, he was prosecuted successfully for his keeping the gun and having the gun, handling the gun in the state he was in. And the jury basically instantly convicted him. Not literally, but practically speaking, I think they deliberated a few hours. According to the jurors who were interviewed, all but one of them was a holdout, and the one final holdout decided that he should be convicted after a further review of the evidence. So it really wasn't a question about whether or not he was guilty in the end. And of course, unlike President Trump, he received a fair trial. And the process in terms of the court process during that trial worked. But the vehicle or the process to get there was corrupted and compromised. The Justice Department was dragged kicking and screaming into prosecuting Hunter Biden. This is my comment after the verdict. The Bidens are going down in the history books with the inaugural felony conviction of a first family member. Unlike former President Trump, as I said, Hunter Biden received a fair trial. This guilty verdict is an important first step towards accountability for Biden family corruption. The public would do well to remember that the Justice Department was dragged, as I noted, kicking and screaming into this prosecution. Our successful Freedom of Information Act litigation exposing federal special protection and cover-up of Hunter Biden's gun scandal shows how this case could have been brought years ago. And what do I mean by that? They knew in 2018 that Hunter had committed these crimes. They had him dead to rights years ago. And so they sat on the case for years. Politico first reported, I think, that Hunter had, the Secret Service and or the FBI had shown up at the store where he purchased the gun almost immediately after it was disposed of in that trash receptacle by his then girlfriend, Beau Biden's widow, Natalie. I think it was Natalie, right? And so that's like October 2018. So Politico reports it out. We get the documents showing indeed something went on I mean, the Secret Service was, in response to this press report out of Politico, one of the Secret Service officials said, well, maybe a favor was called in. So they've been sitting on it for years. This special prosecutor, as U.S. attorney, sat on this case for years. And if they had had their druthers, the Biden Justice Department would never have prosecuted this and given him a get-out-of-jail-free card for what, by all accounts, is a serious gun crime. Now, I know some of our friends in the Second Amendment area don't like this law, think the laws are kind of stupid, and I haven't researched it that closely, and I respect their views on these issues, so my guess is they're probably right. But if there is an Exhibit A as to why a law requiring at least a disclosure about drug addiction before purchasing a gun, Hunter Biden is Exhibit A. I mean, the way he handled that gun, the way it was disposed of in the frenzied state he was in by his girlfriend, it was so dangerous. He's lucky he didn't get killed and no one else was killed as a result of him having this gun in the state he was in. Now, we're all supposed to pretend that, we should be sympathetic for Hunter and his family. Well, he could have pled out. He could have taken responsibility as opposed to pretending he did nothing wrong. I mean, if he's truly recovered, why isn't he taking responsibility for this misconduct? Instead, he went to a federal trial, and I think evidently hoped through his lawyer to convince the jury that this is a political case, which isn't implausible in some respects, right? It is a political case necessarily. He's the president's son. But it's part of this de minimis approach that the Justice Department and the special counsel has taken to the Biden family corruption. This gun charge, which they initially tried to bury, and which conveniently excludes Joe Biden. Not that factually he was necessarily involved in the cover-up. Maybe he was, I don't know. Why was the Secret Service and the FBI sitting on this for years? Did Joe know about it? I don't know. As a prosecutor, I would have asked the question. And then the tax charges he faces a trial on, again, which only happened because of whistleblowers coming forward saying there was a cover-up, and the federal judge who ended up handling this gun case up in Delaware asking questions about the sweetheart plea deal, basic questions about it, and caused the plea deal to collapse under the weight of its corruption. And so these IRS tax charges are constrained, restricted in terms of how far back they go, because they've let the statute of limitations lapse on charges that would have further implicated Joe Biden, potentially. And there's nothing about the racketeering operation that Joe Biden and Hunter and the rest of the family were running. So this prosecution may be necessary, but it's certainly not sufficient for full accountability for Biden family corruption. And my guess is, and I was on Brian Kilmeade the other day, his radio show, and he played a clip from Fox News where someone suggested this, and I had seen it earlier from Trey Gowdy, and I think Gowdy was right, and the analyst that Brian played for me was right, that they thought that he would just plead out to the IRS case, right? That he would just plead guilty and just wait for Joe to pardon him or commute a sentence after the election. And that to me is quite a plausible scenario. So the only check is whether or not there will be a prosecution of Hunter for other crimes, including the crime, as we discussed here last week, of perjury. There was a criminal referral to the Justice Department and the special counsel, who in my view shouldn't be the special counsel because of his involvement in prior cover-ups, according to whistleblowers and the record, really. You know, the proof is the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. And the pudding was they tried to shut all this down, and they weren't terribly interested in pursuing these issues, even though they were in his bailiwick up there in Delaware. And so President Trump, if he were to be elected, would be in a position to prosecute, or his Justice Department would be in a position to prosecute this referral for perjury by the House of Representatives. And my colleague Chris Farrell has a program we run on our YouTube channel and our social media platforms, On Watch. And Chris interviewed one of the committee chairmen, Representative Comer, who runs the Oversight Committee, about the perjury that Hunter and Joe's brother James engaged in, or are accused of committing. To be fair, they're allegations, but pretty powerful case against them. Let's go to that clip of James talking to Chris.
After the deposition for Hunter Biden and the transcribed interview for Jim Biden, we determined with 65 pages of evidence that they committed perjury. And we caught Hunter Biden in 2 lies. We caught Jim Biden in 1 lie. All 3 lies revolved around protecting Joe Biden. So we did official criminal referrals to the Department of Justice.
And what do you expect that paragon of justice, Attorney General Merrick Garland, to do with your letter?
Well, the Attorney General has a history of charging people and going after people who were held in contempt when the Democrats were in control. He did that with Roger Stone when he was held in contempt of Congress by the January 6th committee for defying a congressional subpoena. So he has a record of taking these congressional referrals seriously. Now, as you and I both know,
Steve Bannon's headed off to jail in a couple of weeks.
He's set off for a different thing as well, right? Merrick Garland, if he wants to prove there's not a 2-tier system of justice, has an opportunity to prosecute the Bidens to the same extent that he prosecuted the 3 former Trump officials.
Now, Garland himself has criminal liability as well as a result of his contempt for Congress. The House finally paying attention to, I hope, Judicial Watch, found Garland in contempt after letting him testify before Congress. He basically said, go jump on a lake, and defended all sorts of misconduct. I had a video of him defending what I believe to be the unconstitutional appointment of Jack Smith here. Thomas Massey tore him a new one.
Thomas Massey goes scorched earth on Merrick Garland.
No, I'm not.
Was Jack Smith nominated by President Biden?
No, he was not.
Was he confirmed by the Senate?
No, he was not.
When was the special counsel statute passed?
There is no special counsel statute. There was an independent counsel statute that was expired.
So it expired. So what gives you the authority to appoint a special counsel? You've created an office in the U.S. government that does not exist without authorization from Congress.
Yeah, I've been saying that for years. Mueller was an unconstitutional appointment, and so is Jack Smith. And now Judge Cannon in Florida is going to consider these arguments, I think within the next week or so. I think by the end of June, she's going to have a series of hearings about the constitutionality of Jack Smith's appointment. The concern is that he's not a Senate-confirmed appointee, nor does he report to someone on a day-to-day basis who is. So you don't have that accountability, and it's like, you just can't hire someone off the street to throw someone in jail and run a grand jury. I mean, that doesn't make sense constitutionally speaking, and it's not, if it doesn't make sense constitutionally speaking, it's probably unconstitutional, right? So, appointing a U.S. attorney as special counsel, that may be appropriate. I mean, at least the U.S. attorney has gone through that vetting and that constitutional system of checks and balances, or at least the process where the Senate confirms them and they report to the Attorney General. They're a U.S. attorney. They have certain powers as a U.S. attorney, federally created position. The special counsel position is a position made up out of whole cloth regulatory. It's a regulatory position. I mean, they just issued new regulations creating it at the Justice Department. We're all supposed to pretend they have constitutional authority as a result, and I don't buy that. Thomas Massey doesn't buy it. Garland is kind of oblivious to it as far as I'm concerned, but they're substantial. You had two former attorney generals, Attorney General Mukasey and Attorney General Meese, file briefs saying it's unconstitutional. Well, and on top of that, you've got the compromised Attorney General, who, for the first time in history, or excuse me, second time in history, because he's the second Attorney General, he's been found in contempt of Congress because he refuses to turn over those audio files of Joe Biden's special counsel interviews to Congress. Now, right now, Judicial Watch is in federal court to get those records. We got a big brief due, I think, in a week or two. Probably less than that now. Fighting for these records. We're likely to get the special counsel audio tapes before Congress does. And sure enough, as I said, the House voted for contempt. It was a strong majority vote given the closeness of how small the majority is, but it looked like pretty much every Republican voted in favor of contempt. And the House was told, again, to go jump in a lake by the Justice Department within minutes, practically speaking. Just a few days later, just before I'm making this video, they issued a letter to the House saying, we're not going to prosecute this. What he's done is perfectly okay. The Justice Department said Friday it will not prosecute the Attorney General after House Republicans voted to hold him in contempt. The Justice Department has a long-standing position of not prosecuting executive branch officials for withholding information, unless they're Peter Navarro or Steve Bannon. Consistent with this long-standing position and uniform practice, again, for Democrats and not for Republicans, the department has determined that the responses by the Attorney General to the subpoena issued by the committees did not constitute a crime. So I got a question. How could they make that decision under the special counsel regulations? Shouldn't they have a special counsel come in and make that decision whether to prosecute and investigate whether a crime was committed there? Isn't the Justice Department and the underlings of Garland, aren't they conflicted? Of course they are. It shows you how it's all rigged to target Republicans and conservatives, Trump supporters, and protect folks like Garland. So when you have the Attorney General acting in a lawless way, and this is just one instance in which he's been acting in a lawless way, it's a national problem that threatens the core rule of law principles that we all rely on to ensure our constitutional republic stands. Next up. Oh, wait, I want to talk about, before I go, two big Supreme Court decisions this week. The first one was in the Mifepristone case, the abortion pill case, where some doctors had challenged the Clinton, Obama, and Biden administrations blowing up of all rules to protect the public health and safety to push abortion pills on women. Judicial Watch had filed amicus briefs highlighting our work exposing the political nature of what they had done and the dangerousness of what they had done. And the Supreme Court, in a widely expected, there's our press release, Judicial Watch files U.S. Supreme Court amicus brief on abortion drug. And we've been investigating this since they started pushing this abortion pill on women. Hillary did it. Hillary was behind pushing this during the Clinton administration. And then Obama, changed the rules to make the abortion pill more widely available. And after Roe versus Wade was overturned, the Biden regime went into overdrive to try to bypass state restrictions on abortion by mailing abortion pills into those states or making it easy for them to do that. And all the rules that are typically used for medications in terms of their dispensing, doctor's visits and, safety issues and follow-up that would be appropriate given the nature of the medication. Of course, it's not medication in any traditional sense. As I've often observed, abortion isn't health care, it's killing. So these are killing drugs. Now, I know there are people who dispute that, but biologically they can't dispute it. It kills an unborn human being. You may think that human being doesn't have any rights or value in terms of life, but it's a biological human being, and the drug acts to kill it. And on top of that, there's a law that the left doesn't like, but it's the law. You can't send abortion pills through the mail. Abortifacients. It's an abortifacient. So the Supreme Court, rather than deal with all these allegations that I'm talking about here and all the concerns about the abuse of power by Obama and Biden and Clinton, said the doctors didn't have standing. And that was a unanimous ruling. So all the conservatives, all the liberals agreed the doctors didn't have standing. The Association of Doctors didn't have standing. It was too tenuous. The doctors weren't being asked, weren't using these pills for abortion, and they didn't have the standing necessary to have been harmed by these regulations. Now, what I think is interesting about that case and that position, that standing is required in order for the challenge to proceed, is how principled it is for the conservatives. Because the temptation would be, if the left, because it shows you the left is lying when they tell you that conservatives on the Supreme Court are inherently political and should be stopped. Because if that were the case, they would have just ignored the standing requirement and gotten to the merits. But they took the principled position that the law required standing in order for this challenge to proceed. Now, it could be that states come in and have the proper standing, or other plaintiffs come in and have the proper standing, and the issue becomes a legally live again, as I like to call it. So that's the big abortion decision everyone was waiting on. So it was kind of it didn't address the debate, but it did address the debate about standing, whether the standing that the doctors had were sufficient to challenge the abuse of power by Biden. And as of now, they were told no. Secondly, there was a decision just issued today about gun stocks. And I'm not much of, I'm a Second Amendment person, but I'm not much of a big gun person. I don't use them. I'm just not familiar with their operations the way some of my friends and colleagues are, who A, are gun enthusiasts, or B, are really into the issue as a matter of policy. As a conservative, though, I recognize just because I don't use something a lot, it doesn't make it wrong and illegal if someone else is using it, meaning guns. And so this gun stock bill or ban was instituted by the ATF after the Las Vegas shooting. Evidently, that shooter, which there are all sorts of questions about that shooting and the craziness around that, but that's another matter, had bump stocks. And the bump stocks the shooter had allowed him to evidently, or so it's been alleged, to kill and shoot many more bullets and kill and harm more people than he otherwise would have had the opportunity to do if he was just using a regular gun, a semi-automatic gun. And so the ATF changed their position that bump stocks are legal, and they banned them through regulation. And it was under the Trump administration. It was a big controversy because Second Amendment advocates said that's not right. You can't do it. And the big debate is the federal law that outlaws machine guns, which are automatic fire weapons, as you may know, is that cover bump stocks. And the way a bump stock works is that it essentially makes it easier. My understanding is, especially after reading the decision today by Justice Thomas, the majority opinion decision, it just makes it easier to fire the weapon continuously, but no more. But it still requires an individual trigger action to fire the weapon. A machine gun, you pull the trigger and it just fires automatically until you let go of the trigger. The bump stock requires additional action in order for the bullet to be ejected. But so it's not a machine gun. It's a separate trigger action. Simple. And Justice Alito said, if you don't like this go-around to make it easier to fire the weapon as best you can tell, then go to Congress and get them to change the law. And they didn't do that. So it's a straightforward decision that the bump stock doesn't turn the gun into a machine gun under the law. Now, the left is, as I call it, the DC Borg outrage at Justice Thomas's 6-3 opinion. Maybe we can draw up the opinion. It might be worth showing some of those pages. Go to the Supreme Court website, guys. Go to the opinion section. That a bump stock equipped gun is not a machine gun under federal law. A bump stock does not, and this is a quote for Justice Thomas's decision I threw in there. A bump stock does not convert a semi-automatic rifle into a machine gun any more than a shooter with a lightning-fast trigger finger does. Meaning, a bump stock is like having someone who can shoot the gun real fast by pulling the trigger, boom, 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 like that. Now, I'm probably mangling the description of a gun stock, right, or a bump stock. I keep on probably calling it a gun stock repeatedly, right? So the bump stock is, it allows you, you pull the trigger, recoil, and the bump stock converts the energy into another firing, and it's basically causes a trigger to be pulled again. And it's kind of like a pump action shotgun, where you pull the trigger and you pump the gun, boom, 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 and the trigger isn't pulled again. It's the pump action that causes the next firing, and that's not considered to be a machine gun. So if you go down, you can see he describes it a little bit. Let's go down. And I encourage you to read these Supreme Court decisions. And there were other decisions that were interesting. They may not have been as interesting broadly to an audience, but they're always educational. So if you're interested in how the Supreme Court operates and the issues they face, it's worth going and looking at the decisions. They're written in a way that I'm not a lawyer, I understand them, and to the degree I'm not aware of the specific law, legal battles and other background. It doesn't necessarily take away from the impact of the argument and how the different courts, the different justices on the court operate and respond to the legal issues before them. Because, sometimes the liberals and conservatives agree and disagree in areas that you might be surprised about. And this is from the syllabus. With a machine gun, a shooter can fire multiple times or even continuously by engaging the trigger only once. This capability distinguishes a machine gun from a semi-automatic firearm. With a semi-automatic firearm, the shooter can fire only one time by engaging the trigger. Using a technique called bump firing, shooters can fire semi-automatic firearms at rates approaching those of some machine guns. A shooter who bump fires a rifle uses the firearm's recoil to help rapidly manipulate the trigger. Although bump firing does not require any additional equipment, a bump stock is an accessory designed to make the technique easier. A bump stock does not alter the basic mechanics of bump firing, and the trigger still must be released and re-engaged to fire each additional shot. So essentially, instead of you pulling your finger back to engage the trigger, the action of the bump stock does it for you. But the trigger is engaged again, even though you're not doing the pulling. And that's the distinction. And it may seem like a small distinction, but it's not a machine gun. Machine guns operate differently. And if we go down further, this is why I encourage you to look at the decision. Justice Thomas inserts material from, here it is. And this is what the holding is. ATF exceeded its statutory authority by issuing a rule that classifies a bump stock as a machine gun. A semi-automatic rifle equipped with a bump stock is not a machine gun because it can't fire more than one shot by a single function of a trigger, and even if it could, it would not do so automatically. A semi-automatic rifle equipped with a bump stock does not fire more than one shot by a single function of the trigger. The phrase function of the trigger refers to the mode of action by which the trigger activates the firing mechanism. No one disputes that a semi-automatic rifle without a bump stock is not a machine gun because the shooter must release and reset the trigger between every shot. And any subsequent shot fired after the trigger has been released and reset is the result of a separate and distinct function of the trigger. Nothing changes when the gun's equipped with a bump stock. So, I hope that point's clear. And so if you go down, we'll see some pictures that Justice Thomas inserted into his opinion, describing how a gun operates. I just wish everyone would look at it, including those who want to destroy our Second Amendment and 14th Amendment rights. There's the relevant there's the trigger, the hammer. It's a simple lever that moves back and forth. And if you go down further, Justice Alito, this is simple stuff. And I don't understand what the debate is. And Justice Alito has kind of this is the analysis that Justice Alito goes through. Let's go down to Justice Alito's opinion. It's just a few pages down. Of course, the left is outraged, right? Because they think they should be able to do anything they want without any constitutional check. And if you're going to change the rules, and if you're going to change the law, or if you want to change the law, you can't do it through regulatory fiat. And this was something the Trump administration did. And Justice Alito said there's simply no other way to read the language. There can be little doubt that the Congress has enacted the law, that the Congress that enacted the law would not have seen any material difference between a machine gun and a semi-automatic rifle equipped with a bump stock. But the statutory text is clear and we must follow it. And he says at the end, but the event that they're concerned about, the Las Vegas shooting, highlights the need to amend a law, not itself does it change the law's meaning. There's a simple remedy for the disparate treatment of bump stocks and machine guns. Congress can amend the law, and perhaps would have done so already if ATF had not stuck with its early interpretation, which was that bump stocks are legal under the law. Now that the situation is clear, Congress can act. So if this is the crisis the left and some conservatives and Republicans think it is, well, they're going to change the law. Is it going to be constitutional then? I don't know. It depends what they say. Usually they go beyond the bounds imposed by the Constitution whenever they talk about guns, so we'll see what happens. But the left has been accelerating and increasing its attacks on Alito and Thomas these past few days. They're not slowing down. It's insane. They hate Justice Thomas because he's black and a conservative. It's race-based. Alito is a leading conservative figure on the court. He wrote the abortion decision that allows states to protect human beings in the womb finally. So the pressure is continuing, and we haven't had the decisions issued by the court yet about presidential immunity, which could help Trump. and about the overreach that the Justice Department is engaged in to misapply a law to try to jail January 6 defendants. And they're worried about that. And the way they deal with the Supreme Court that issues decisions they don't like is by undermining and smearing the justices writing the decisions. And generally undermining the court so they can rig the court either by forcing the recusal of people through improper means or otherwise attacking the court and maybe getting people to maybe change their decision because they don't want to get attacked anymore. And their end goal is to essentially eliminate the court as a check on their power by widely expanding it and turning it into a purely political institution like Congress. So that's what we face. As you read the Supreme Court decisions, I encourage you, we'll put the links to the Supreme Court abortion and gun rights decision below on the abortion pill and the bump stock case. And I said, we've got these other big decisions upcoming. Keep that in the back of your mind. The left wanted to rig those decisions one way or the other and think, well, were these decisions rigged at all? And if they weren't, and they're decisions you think are great and are pro-Constitution, I encourage you to understand that we have to fight back against these attacks on the court. And that's what we try to do with our educational and oversight activities at Judicial Watch. So there's a story that Judicial Watch alone, practically speaking, has uncovered. And the story is one of terrible abuse of federal personnel by Joe and Jill Biden. They have allowed their German Shepherd dogs over the years to attack Secret Service and White House personnel time after time after time. I think it's at least 2-3 dozen times when you combine the attacks by both dogs, Major initially and then Commander. And we just uncovered more documents, thanks to another lawsuit we had to file, that show that Joe Biden, or further demonstrate that Joe Biden watched his dogs attack Secret Service agents, specifically Commander. Our friends at the New York Post broke the story. Let's go to the New York Post story. They had an exclusive from us in reporting the story. So this was their big story. Biden repeatedly watched his dog attack Secret Service agents. As staff we have to go through what you go through whenever you look at the internet. We get all the ads pop up on our browsers too. As staff wished each other safe shift, docs, and the docs were from Judicial Watch. President Biden repeatedly watched his German Shepherd Commander attack Secret Service members who wished each other a safe shift as the number of incidents mounted, with one exasperated workplace safety professional urging the use of a muzzle, agency records show. The number of dog attacks involving Commander, who the White House said in February was given away after more than 2 years of terrorizing the professionals assigned to protect Biden, and the former first dog Major, who was rehomed in 2021 after also attacking personnel. Of course, all of that uncovered by Judicial Watch, could top 3 dozen, the newly surfaced records suggest. The 81, of course, what was the FBI, what was Joe's response? Oh, the Secret Service is lying about this. Look at what the Post said here. The 81-year-old president reportedly accused a Secret Service member of lying about being attacked by Major during his first year in office, but was present for at least 3 separate attacks involving Commander, files released to Judicial Watch under the Freedom of Information Act, or lawsuit show. A previously unreported incident on September 12, 2023 featured a pair of bites in which Commander tore holes in a Secret Service member's suit as Biden took him for a walk in the Kennedy Garden along the south lawn of the White House. So you can go and read the full New York Post story there. And this is my report alert to folks earlier this week about the Biden attacks. Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here. We got some crazy documents from the Secret Service about Joe Biden's crazy dog commander attacking Secret Service personnel. According to the documents, which we got thanks to a federal FOIA lawsuit, Joe had the dog when he attacked Secret Service. One of the incidents showed that Joe was walking the dog, had the dog, when the dog attacked a Secret Service agent twice. Bit him on the arm, not once, but twice, while Joe had the dog. Other documents show the Secret Service was trying to delete records. It shows without a shadow of a doubt that Joe Biden is personally responsible for the attacks of his dogs and Secret Service personnel. Of course, Jill had the dog from other documents we know when the dog attacked Secret Service as well. So both are responsible for, it looks like, upwards of 2-3 dozen attacks on Secret Service and White House personnel. What type of insanity is going on over there in the White House that the first couple would allow their dogs to attack Secret Service personnel repeatedly? And of course, all of this was exposed only thanks to the heavy lifting of Judicial Watch. I mean, it's psychotic that this is happening. Like, would you want to live next to people who allowed their dogs to attack 25 people and not do anything unless they were called out on it? And still not do anything after they called out on it? That September 2023 attack, that occurred months after Judicial Watch disclosed the dog was out of control, had attacked like a dozen people by then. I think we had issued a release in the summer of 2023, and a few months later, the dog is still attacking Secret Service while Joe's walking him. Well, Fox News covered it pretty significantly. Let's go to Laura Ingraham and Fox and Friends, and then Jesse Waters, our friends there, had a good report on it.
All right, is it time to sequester the witness? Because a new report has Biden being aware of what Commander did with just a few choice Secret Service agents. Fox News senior national correspondent Kevin Corke is here with all the chewy details. Kevin.
Brilliantly written, my friend. Evening to you. Now, Judicial Watch is giving us a window.
One thing that did not help the president's image, when his dog went on an attack spree, Biden reportedly watching his dog Commander attack Secret Service on multiple occasions as staff wished each other, hey, have a safe shift. Hopefully.
Fox News alert, we have new details on Biden's bad dog. The president watched as Commander attacked Secret Service agents. Kevin Corke's in D.C. with the story. Kevin.
Evening, Jesse. Judicial Watch giving us an exclusive window into the harrowing circumstances surrounding, you said it, Commander, the president's dog, and his numerous attacks on Secret Service agents, which could, by the way, top 3 dozen such attacks, according to newly released records. What's more, apparently the president himself was present for at least 3 of those attacks. Now, everybody knows Commander has been known to, bite. But there are a lot of examples you may not know about, including this one. Quote, as I started to walk toward him being the president, to see if he needed help, Commander ran through his legs and bit my left arm through the front of my jacket. I pulled my arm away and yelled, no. POTUS yelled, and then blank. Now, the story went on, Jesse, to say that the dog later jumped up and bit him in the left arm again for a second time. His suit coat had not 1, not 2, but 3 holes, one all the way through. And that's not it. There are other conversations between Secret Service officials, including this one from September 2023. Heads up and FYI. TMZ just reported a dog bite at the White House. Can we please find a way to get this dog muzzled? Now, you'll recall, former First Dog Major was also rehoused back in 2021 after apparently attacking a lot of people. In this instance, Secret Service members, Jesse, wished each other safe shift as the attacks mounted. That's really damning right there. That tells you plenty, Jesse.
No, it's not funny. I've been bitten by a vicious Democrat dog, too, and it hurts.
Yeah,
I still have a mark on my upper thigh. No one will see that except
Well, there's a good story by Kevin Cork describing Judicial Watch's documents, and here are the documents we got. You can go look at them all, get them on Judicial Watch's website. We'll provide a link to the press release below and the documents through which you can confirm that the Biden dogs are out of control, or were out of control. I don't know where they are now. I don't know why we would believe anything they're telling us. This chart may have been released before, but it's worth going over again. It lists a lot of the dog bites. I mean, look at this. Left arm, left hand, left forearm, right quad, thigh, right lower back. That's a classic one. I remember that attack, or the details of that attack. So there was I think it was a Secret Service technician, right? So he goes to the house, someone opens the door, and the dog gets out. I guess he went like this, and the dog bit him on the back. I mean, can you imagine being a subject to that type of dog attack? That's pretty traumatic. I know there's a lot of people laughing about this, but I think it's pretty darn serious that the Secret Service were under constant attack by this first couple's dogs. It's inexcusable. It's in my view, a criminal abuse of power. Completely insane. Let's go back to the chart. Right wrist, right forearm, right elbow, upper arm, left elbow, left chest. But I don't know the detail of that one. I don't remember that. Do you guys remember it? I don't remember it. I mean, this only goes to July of 2023. I guess they were at I guess there's the Kennedy Garden attacks. So it's 2 bites in the left arm. And then they're up at the beach, and there's another attack. And here's the email. Let's go back to the email that Kevin quoted on Fox. Look at that. POTUS took Commander on a leash. So the Secret Service agent's reporting to his colleagues, and I was standing halfway from the booksellers in the Family Theater. POTUS opened the bookseller door. I'm not quite sure what the bookseller is in the White House. Is that? I don't know if that's is there a shop or something? I'm not sure. And said blank. I guess he was calling him. As I started to walk toward him to see if he needed help, Commander ran through his legs and bit my left arm through the front of my jacket. I pulled my arm away and yelled, "No." POTUS, I guess, yelled something. It's interesting that they're protecting what Joe said. "No, Commander." POTUS then blank. I obliged, and the Commander let me pet him. When turning to close the door, Commander jumped again and bit my left arm for the second time. And then he attached the leash to him. No skin was broken. You know, other documents show that we've had before that it was a bloody mess. I mean, I want you to imagine a dog coming at you, and the only thing you can do to defend yourself is putting out the arm. In this case, that poor Secret Service agent had his turn once, twice, while the President of the United States watched. Now, do I say that Biden sicked the dog on the Secret Service? No. But the fact is that the Secret Service was constantly abused by these dogs, and they did nothing about it. The earlier documents show that Jill Biden had the dog and was in control of the dog when the dog attacked Secret Service personnel. I don't forget if it was Major or Commander, but it doesn't matter. And all of this was coming out because we were tipped off, by the way, because Major was removed after we uncovered the dog bit a lot more people than they admitted to, caught the White House in a lie. So they got Commander as a new dog after poor Major was removed. And they had a third dog, Champ, and I don't remember if Champ was a biter or not. Then we got a tip that Commander was out of control, and we exposed it. Through this litigation. Where's my press release on this? I mean, they all, some of those folk, they had to either go to the medical unit, a few had to go to the hospital. I mean, one poor guy had his suit ruined. When he tried to get it reimbursed, they gave him the runaround. There you go. Replaced the suit. Secret Service log of the same day reported that at 8:06 p.m. on September 25th, 2023, an officer, it's probably because there's a uniform division of the Secret Service, right? And then you have the protective division. I don't know if it's technically the two division names, but the guys in suits, the guys and women in suits you're used to seeing, that's what I consider to be the protective division. And the officer, the uniform division, are, they're dressed like normal police officers, protecting the grounds of the White House and the environs there. Officer redacted, post redacted, so they don't say where the person was posted or the person's name. Advised bit by family pet and requested sector official. Sergeant Blank requested EMT to respond. So emergency personnel had to respond. This is September. This is what's interesting. The last entry on the log indicates 8:58 p.m. Captain Blank request Joint Operations Center log to be deleted. What's going on there? As I noted in my comment, it looks like they're trying to delete records. We're currently investigating that, by the way. I'll have more on that at a future update, maybe. And the press was all on to this. The press knew about this because CNN followed our lead and uncovered there were many more bytes than had been previously acknowledged even after we released that material. So what happened was we released 10 or 12 bytes last year in the middle of the year. CNN heard that there were upwards of 24 bytes, including the bytes in, I guess it was in September, October. A colleague asked, how does TMZ know before we do? Because they referenced about that TMZ story. Well, go to that TMZ story, guys, if you can. It's in the press release. There's a link. Stand by. Because I want to show you how the TMZ knew. It's very interesting. So the TMZ story, there we are, go to the link. His dog commander accused of biting 7 people. So scroll down. Where did TMZ get that information? Secret Service memo by the New York Post. Let's go to that New York Post website story. Exclusive. The pooch. That's the story I'm telling you about. It disclosed by Judicial Watch. So the reason we got this material and the Secret Service is like, well, how did they know about this? It's because Judicial Watch sued for the records. They got them. So none of this would have come out. And I'm proud of Judicial Watch's work here. I know some people online say, well, this isn't important. I think it's important. I think it's important that the First Lady and the President of the United States, their dog has attacked 12 or 36 personnel. I mean, if a dog attacked your family member, bit him on the thigh or bit him on the arm, would you think that's important? And the dog was owned by the President of the United States, and you knew that the dog had previously bitten 20, 25, 30 people previously? I mean, dog bites are a serious issue. And I tell you, when the commander-in-chief allows the people who protect him to be abused like that, I hate to use the word because I think it's strong, but it's appropriate. It's psychotic. Sociopathic, is that the word? It's insanity. It's criminal abuse of power, in my view. And you want to know, you wonder why it is that he casually jails his political opponents? Casually violates the law, casually allows an invasion of the United States of America? Well, that to me is easy to understand. If you understand he's casually allowing and accusing the people protecting him of lying as his dog is attacking them. Now the media is onto this. Look at all these news stories. Daily Mail, Fox News. That's too small for me. Let's go to the Daily Mail. They always have fun headlines. Bombshell new records reveal more than 36 attacks. Look at that. Even the Daily Beast had a story saying about, the story of the Daily Beast. I don't know if it's linked in that email, guys, but the Daily Beast story, as I recall, I think I linked it in our Twitter feed or my Twitter feed, reveals that the Secret Service have issues with the way they've been treated. Can you blame them? So yeah, I think it's a big story. And I'm proud of Judicial Watch's work trying to protect law enforcement personnel in the Secret Service being abused by the Commander-in-Chief. Violently abused. It's funny, I wasn't funny. I was walking near my home today and someone walked down the street with a little pit bull. And I stopped a good 10 feet away because it was a pit bull. And the pit bull stopped, gave me a look, and made a decision that he was going to start trying to attack me. And thankfully, the woman on the leash was able to constrain the pit bull. And it was a relatively small dog. But I don't care how big you are, how strong you think you are, you don't want to be attacked even by a little dog, let alone a German Shepherd or a pit bull or anything like that. And that was going on a day-to-day basis at the Secret Service. And they were being told, keep your hands in your pockets. And the Secret Service's job is to protect the President of the United States. So they're supposed to be looking outward, right? Looking out for threats. I'm kind of exaggerating here. They shouldn't have to worry about being attacked from behind by the first family's dog. I mean, to me, it's dangerous not only for the Secret Service, but for the protectees. So if I were telling the Bidens, look, you don't want your Secret Service nervous about protecting you because of the dog, because that distracts from their core function. They're human beings. But I guess reason didn't matter here. So I think it's a big deal. So we've got more documents, I'm sure, coming on this. And I've got one thing to ask you. Imagine if it was Trump's dogs. Now, Trump doesn't have dogs. I don't think he's not a pet. As I discussed earlier, I don't think he's a pet guy. If Trump's dogs bit 25 people, he'd be impeached. He'd be impeached. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that would be the only reason to impeach someone. If they could get Trump caught allowing his dogs to bite 25 people, I don't know. Maybe he would be fairly impeached. Now, we're laughing in the office today because someone asked about the Biden's cat. And I don't know what the cat's up to. Maybe the cat put the dogs, created this whole scenario to get the dogs out of the way. Who knows? You know what goes on with cats. But, I guess I'm saying not to mock it, right? But, because it's, but it's a dog story. It's literally a dog bites man story. But it kind of it tells us a lot about the Biden approach to other human beings, approach to, frankly, the rule of law. I mean, I'd be worried about liability, wouldn't you? And certainly people getting hurt because of your dog. Not once, but 25, 35 times. Jeez. Like I said, psychotic. A lot going on. So another big case is the records fight we're in for Joe Biden's records up in the University of Delaware. The Senate records of Joe Biden are all hidden in the University of Delaware. We're not allowed to get them according to a secret deal until after he leaves political office. I think the rule is for 2 years, the agreement is. But the University of Delaware is a public university, publicly funded. We thought, with our friends at the Daily Caller News Foundation, that we should be able to get the records. And at least get records about the deal to keep the records secret from the American people. And the response back from the government was, or the University of Delaware was, no, good state money was used to spend on these records. And then Special Counsel Hur issued a special counsel report saying they paid Joe Biden's former staffers to help gather the records. So we went back to the court and said, what's going on here? And that's kind of a quick summary of it all. So there's a hearing that was scheduled for Wednesday, and the hearing took place on our Judicial Watch petition to reopen the case for the release of Joe Biden's Senate records, because the courts had ruled, well, they're saying no government money. So if there's no government money, you can't get access to the records. 4 years. It went up to the Supreme Court of Delaware twice. And we want the case reopened in light of, as I described, the findings of Special Counsel Robert Hur that contradict representations made under oath by representatives of the University of Delaware that no consideration was paid to Biden in connection with his gift of the Senate records. In July 2023, the Delaware Supreme Court sided with the university, denying the release of the records because the university stated to the courts that no tax dollars were used to manage them. So the case has been shut down since July. On February 5th, 2024, Hur released his report. It calls into question the representations by the university. In its petition to reopen the case, Judicial Watch argues the following. The university's affidavit provides in relevant part that no consideration was paid to President Biden, state-funded or otherwise, in connection with the senatorial papers. To the contrary, the special counsel report found that Mr. Biden asked two of his former longtime Senate staffers to review his boxes in courtesy storage, and that the staffers were paid by the University of Delaware to perform a pre-gift review. As our client representing the editor-in-chief at the Daily Caller News Foundation, Michael Basek, the Hur report revelations are absolutely stunning. He said the University of Delaware has some serious explaining to do. And I noted that this is powerful evidence that the courts were misled about the Biden papers. So remember, there's the deal, and then there's the do you see the thumb thing go up every time I do something like that?
Yeah, it's a Mac issue.
Oh, it's a Mac issue, I'm told. So the deal is the The deal is we want the deal documents, and of course the senatorial papers, which are kind of a much, which is hopefully a path forward if the case is reopened. That we have a path forward to reopening or gaining access to those records ultimately. And of course, President Biden could make the records available immediately. And why is it important we gain access to the records? Well, do I need to tell you why it's important? First of all, he was hiding classified records and stolen classified records in those materials from his days as a vice senator. And he was given a pass by her for his criminal activity, even while Trump is being prosecuted. And plus, people want to know what he was doing as a senator. He's president of the United States. The more to know, the more we know, the better off we are. So we had the hearing on this issue this week. I listened in, participated, and we were ably represented by our lawyers up in Delaware before the court judge there. And, the judge had a hearing, and he listened to both sides, questioned both sides. He's obviously carefully examining the various issues, and he'll rule relatively soon. And I go through this with you because it's an important issue. It's something that's personal to Joe Biden that he's covering up. I mean, the University of Delaware is just following his wishes and keeping these records from us, the American people. And then there's a question about University of Delaware, which is a powerful entity up in Delaware, potentially lying to a court to protect Joe Biden. So it's a big deal. Another huge story in terms of battling corruption, demanding transparency for the most powerful person on the planet, the President of the United States. So I'll let you know how that turns out when we hear from the court. Speaking of the most powerful person on the planet, at one time one could argue Dr. Anthony Fauci was. I exaggerate a little bit, but you know what I mean. He was certainly one of the most powerful people in government for a period of time during the COVID pandemic. He usurped the role of elected officials and appointed officials in lording over America during the COVID pandemic. And, the rule of bureaucrats is something that should be frowned upon by good Republicans, small r. And one of the problems early on with the pandemic was how the government responded, which was a panic response, a political response, and in my view, a lawless response in terms of being anti-constitutional. And we knew they were breaking their own rules. And we want to know the after-action reports. We want to know the details of what they did. And Judicial Watch has just sued HHS for records on the preparations for and response to the COVID pandemic. And this is the response or the request. Records and/or communications of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, Department of Health and Human Services, that refer to and/or document any after-action reports, lessons learned, and other action reviews, review of procedures, analysis studies, or hot washes concerning preparing and/or responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we asked for that. When did we ask for that? Go back up. So August of 2022. And so we asked for it. And look this is the game we always have to go through here. Go down a little bit further. Up to that page. Still on that page, next paragraph. At HHS's request, we clarified our request. They acknowledged receipt of the request clarified on August 30th. They asked for a little bit of time. And they went into radio silence. That's our way of saying that other paragraph. As of the date of this complaint, the State Department, it shouldn't be the State Department, it should be the HHS. has failed to determine whether to comply with the request, notify plaintiff of any such determination or the reasons thereof, and advise plaintiff of the right to appeal any adverse determination, or produce the records, God forbid, or otherwise demonstrate the requested records are exempt from production. So they could tell us no. They don't even want to tell us no. And why are we asking? In January 2022, the Government Accountability Office released its report titled COVID-19, HHS and DoD transitioned vaccine responsibilities to HHS but need to address outstanding issues, which included recommendations for executive action such as in July 2022, HHS stated that as it conducts after-action reviews and gathers lessons learned, it aims to include key stakeholders, including but not limited to federal partners, manufacturers, and others, as appropriate. HHS provided an update in January on its lessons learned activities. We reviewed the documentation, requested additional specificity of how they conducted the lessons learned effort, and with which agencies they coordinated. As of April 2024, they haven't responded. So this is the sort of stuff we want. What are you doing? Were there any mistakes you made by imposing 6 feet separations, shutdowns, mask mandates, pushing for vaccine requirements for the whole country, more or less? So this is just like another basic FOIA lawsuit. You know, it's interesting. The left tells us, and you know, and it's a fair point. I shouldn't say just the left. I mean, COVID was a big deal. It was a bigger deal than it should have been because of the crazed response to it. So why can't we get everything the government has about it? Like, did they respond properly? I mean, what if there's another pandemic? Are they going to do the same stupid things they did during the last one? Destroy our economy? Ruin the lives of children? Place people's health at risk by not allowing them to gain access to health facilities? Destroy families and the lives of families by requiring people to be fired if they don't sign on to vaccine mandates? Making people die alone? And all the craziness that went on during COVID. Of course, they don't want to admit that all that was garbage. That's why they don't want to give us these documents. Because you can bet there are people who know what went on in the government. I mean, who know that they threw out all the rules they have for a pandemic and just made it up in a way, frankly, it looks like in a way designed to undermine America and abuse our citizens, not to protect the public health. So I'm proud of this new lawsuit, and it's one of probably 20 at this point lawsuits the Judicial Watch has been pursuing on COVID, the vaccines, you name it. There's no one doing more work on this. And it's not just us doing lawsuits. We educate Congress about what we find. We've worked with Congress to help direct their investigations where appropriate. I mean, we know more than Congress does about some of this. Congress gets some great material as well, separately. But when it comes to asking the government for records, you need everyone who can ask the government for records to ask government for records. Because they may give different records to Congress than they give to Judicial Watch, and because, frankly, it's a different office that handles responses to Congress than the FOIA offices that handle responses to Judicial Watch. The search may take place on a different day. The search may require different key terms. They may search COVID-19 for the Congress and COVID for Judicial Watch. I'm exaggerating or That's just like by way of an example. I'm saying that sort of thing happens, obviously. But that's why it's important there be independent oversight in addition to what Congress is doing. And of course, Congress gets the runaround and rarely goes to court over it, but Judicial Watch goes to court over it. And this is why we're often more successful in getting documents out than Congress does. Speaking of Congress, we got some new documents about how the FBI was seemingly coordinating, colluding with Democrats in Congress against IRS or FBI whistleblowers who are blowing the whistle on FBI misconduct and abuse. These are incredible documents. I got them here. I printed them out. So we got the cover letter here. Response to our lawsuit. And they released 72 pages. 72 pages were reviewed, and 53 pages are being released in whole or in part. And the records show that, to sum up, that the FBI was working with Democratic staffers on the Hill to basically destroy the witnesses who were FBI whistleblowers. So what happened is I just dropped our press release. 1 second. We received, as I said, the records from the Department of Justice in a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, which shows that the Office of Congressional Affairs, that's the, as I said, there are offices that deal specifically with Congress, provided a Democratic staffer with information on FBI whistleblowers who detailed the Bureau's targeting of political opponents and retaliation for their testifying at a May 18th, 2023 hearing. A May 23rd email from Damon Marks, senior counsel to the Office of New York Democrat Dan Goldman, who's a notorious, basically, hitman against anyone who raises questions about corruption in the Biden administration. He's kind of one of the go-to people for Democrats. He, before he was a member of Congress, he was running impeachment efforts against Trump. And so he's always out front trying to dismiss any concerns about corruption by the regime. So it starts off by, there's a series of emails where, I don't think I told them in the back to look at these, forgive me.
On screen.
There you go. Yeah, that's the type of email I was looking for. So that email is dated May 16th. It's my understanding, keep on going, that you're out this week. But if you have a moment to chat about some of the witnesses to Thursday's weaponization hearing, it would be super helpful. Please let me know if you're available tomorrow when you have a chance. And so later the next week, which was May 23rd, Marks writes, and they followed up. It's clear they gave them the information they wanted on the whistleblower witnesses. We spoke last week before the weaponization hearing on Thursday, so they called them. Thanks again for sending over those documents. They were helpful to the congressman. Francesco, my colleague CC'd here, and I will be good points of contact for you going forward. So they set up further communications. On May 18th, a hearing was held by the House Committee on the Judiciary and Select Committee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. Highlights of the hearing include that the FBI, as the evidence was that the FBI had been politically weaponized. The agents who testified included Special Agent Garrett O'Boyle, Stephen Friend, George Hill, and a staff operations specialist, Marcus Allen, who we've previously represented. And Marcus just had his security clearance reinstated after he was punished for doing his job, which meant being on the wrong side of the Biden regime. During the hearing, Marcus Allen, for instance, was allowed to discuss the suspension he incurred for merely forwarding open source news articles to his colleagues. Why exactly did you send the emails, he was asked. I sent the emails just for awareness because they indicated potential problems with the investigation. This is a January 6th investigation as far as informants were concerned, and our organization's potential forthrightness about the utilization of informants there on that day, January 6th. That might have had some impact on our cases and the subjects we're looking up, and just a general awareness overall for the investigation as a whole. There might be some kind of potential federal involvement in the activities of January 6th. He's doing it part of his job, as he testified. And the day before the hearing, they revoked the security clearances, by the way, of Friend, Garrett, officially, and as I said, Marcus Allen. These troubling records show that the FBI colluded with Democrats hostile to FBI whistleblowers who are set to testify to Congress. So the FBI is sending material on FBI agents who are seen as helping expose the truth about FBI abuse and misconduct. I've said it once, I'll say it again. The FBI is irredeemably corrupt. We need to do more than just replace the head of the FBI or cut its funding. We need to rethink the FBI fundamentally, whether it should exist at all, how much power it should have, whether its powers and activities should be restricted. Basically it looks like, to me, based on these documents, they were sending over dirt on agents to undermine their testimony to the Congress. Again, we got the proof. It's in the emails. You can look at them yourselves. You don't have to believe me. You can believe your own eyes after you read the documents. So, if this is the sort of work you support, if you think that we need an entity to uncover what the government's up to sue them over misconduct, then I think you'll support Judicial Watch. And if you like what you're hearing here, I encourage you to go to our website and give us a donation, a most generous donation. And if you supported us before, thank you. You see, we put your donations to good use. And I encourage you to continue to support our work because there's a lot more heavy lifting to be done. On your behalf, on behalf of FBI whistleblowers, on behalf of Secret Service agents being attacked by Joe Biden's dogs, on behalf of innocent politicians and activists being jailed by the Biden administration, and on behalf of the American people who just want the rule of law followed and our Constitution protected. And with that, I'll see you here next week on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.